Hello, church. I hope this devotional finds you well. I know these are troubling and challenging, difficult times, but I'm reminded daily that God is moving. He is alive and well. Before I start this devotional, I really want to. I had a little nugget, a little word that God gave me this morning, that the absence of comfort is faith. The absence of comfort is Jesus. So take that, be reminded of that today. The title of my devotional today is called He Knew, and in parentheses, He Knows. Today we're going to be reading from John 6, chapter 6, verses 4 through 13. And so the title is He Knew. So the Jewish Passover festival was near. So just a little background information on this. The Passover festival was weeks long. All of the Jews gathered in Jerusalem to celebrate this Passover festival with feasts and with banquets. And at this moment, Jesus and his disciples were nowhere near Jerusalem and had no plans of going to Jerusalem. But 5,000 people chose to forego going to Jerusalem just to hear Jesus speak, just to see Jesus and be in his presence. And so we start that with verse 4, moving on to verse 5. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already knew what he had in mind, what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than a half year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have just one bite." Jesus began by immediately looking at Philip. Soon after, John tells us that Jesus already knew what he was going to do. See, Jesus asked Philip because Philip was from a nearby town. See, he asked Philip because Philip should have known what to do. Philip panicked, right? Philip gave Jesus an answer exactly like we would. Philip represents us. Jesus asked Philip because he was supposed to know it's going to take a half year's wages just to get him one bite. And so that brings me to my first point. Don't let your estimate of what can be done reflect what God can do. We move on to verse 8. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will this go among many?" You see, Andrew was doubting. He lacked faith as well. How far will this go among so many? See, they doubted. They had seen Jesus perform countless miracles up to this point. And they still doubted. So this is a really special moment in the story that they bring this small boy forward to give the food. All of the resources that the 12 disciples had in order to get food for these people. Half of them were fishermen. Some were they're tax collectors. They had money to pool. They could have fished for the food for the 5,000. They could have went to the town and bought food for everybody. They had the tools to do something, but they lacked faith. And then Jesus used the least of these. He always uses the least of these, which brings me to my second point. He will always use all that we can offer. He will always use all that we can offer, but there's a caveat. There's nothing that we can offer Jesus. He has it all. He can do it all, right? Except faith. Except faith. See, Jesus doesn't ask for anything. He asks for everything. He asks us to give him everything because all that we can offer him is our faith in him, to trust in his plan because he knows. The disciples freaked out. The boy offered everything because the boy trusted in the plan. 2 fish, 5 loaves of bread was all he had. That was his faith because Jesus knew what he was going to do. Here's something to take away from this message if you don't take anything else away. Jesus gave one command before performing his greatest, most unfathomable miracle, the only miracle that is found in all 4 Gospels. Jesus gave one command for the disciples to tell the people. 5,000 hungry men is what the Bible tells us. Verse 10 says, Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." What a command. That's so relevant to the time that we're in now. It isn't what we can do or what the people could have done to be fed. It's always what he can do because he knows what is going to happen. He said, "Sit down." He didn't tell the 12 disciples to go tell the people to fish. He didn't tell them to go collect money and go to the town and buy everything, to do this, to do that. No. He told them to sit down and let him do what only he can do. Because he knew what was going to happen all along. He's giving us a command today during these trying times. Sit down, step back. He knows what's going to happen. When he was breaking the bread to feed 5,000 people, he knew that the coronavirus was going to take over the world. He knew it. He knows. So sit down. That was his command. He is still moving, but it isn't what about the people did. They sit down, they had faith, and let him do his thing. Remember, though, it takes the faith. He doesn't ask for anything. He asks for everything. Guess what he did? The story goes on. There was plenty of grass in the place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Verse 11, Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to all those that were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted. Verse 13, so they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of 5 barley loaves that were left over that had eaten. He provided. He knew. He fed 5,000 hungry men as much as they wanted and more. Remember when Philip said they would only get one bite? Here's the best part and my final takeaway. When they had enough to eat, he told the disciples to grab 12 baskets full of leftovers. 12. What started as 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread fed 5,000 people with so much that they had baskets full. People could have eaten twice, 3 times. So my final point, he only gives in abundance. He only provides more than we will ever need. Take heart, church, in knowing that the creator of the universe, the creator of you and me, is moving and providing exceedingly abundantly above all that we can ever imagine. But it ain't our way of doing it. Our worldly answer to this mess is fear, to run, to be scared, to think of practical human answers to a global pandemic. Nope. If we can step away from our idea of how this is going to work out, from our plan, from our idea of how our lives will go, then he can move. Remember, the absence of comfort is faith, because he knows. Have faith. Sit down. I'm closing with one of the most well-known Bible verses that you'll know it, Jeremiah 29, verse 11 and verse 12. So we all know verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. See, I read that verse for a long time as, for I know the plans that I have for myself. Lord, bless me with my plans. But that's not what the verse says. For I know the plans I have for you, comma, declares the Lord. They're his plans. It's his way. If we trust in his plan, we will prosper. We will not be harmed. We will have hope and a future. It's his plan because he knows. Verse 12 says, then you will call on me and come to pray, and I will listen. Sit down, step back, have faith that the King of Kings is working on his plan as we speak. He will not harm us. We will prosper, but he knows, not us. I love you, church. Please take heart in this message. Take heart during these troubling times that he knows to trust in his plan. I am praying for all those that are watching this and listening to this. I love you all. Please remember that we are gathering in our homes every night at 9 p.m. for a time of prayer and worship. Join together as we all pray for our families, our community, our country, our world during these trying times. Thank you.